Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm so honored to be with you. And thank you to Peace, Katie, Dr. Tara Rai, and the entire Women Changing the World team for hosting this amazing summit and bringing together so many inspiring people and ideas. I'm Jessica Hansen. I'm CEO of the international medical nonprofit Alliance for Smiles. I'm also vice president of the board of directors of the West African Voluntary Organization. I serve on a lot of boards. I'm a TEDx speaker, host of the Humankind podcast, 2025 Women Changing the World Woman of the Year at the Americas Summit, as well as the Human Rights and Humanitarian Impact Award winner, and a very honored co-author of the new book, Begin It Now. The core lessons of my chapter, To Live Fully in Each Moment and Begin It Now, come from my life and my work in humanitarian aid over the last 25 years. I started out in anti-human trafficking work in Southeast Asia and gender-based violence prevention in refugee camps in East Africa. I have truly worked everywhere, from the United Nations to rural villages to tech companies and beyond, developing and leading international humanitarian programs in education, microfinance, refugee protection and resettlement, and now global healthcare. And I've also helped tech companies design strategies to utilize their resources of people, products, and profit to create a positive impact on the world. I would love to dive into any of these topics that interest you, so I hope you'll reach out and connect with me anytime. For today, I'll focus instead on a few of the overarching truths that continue to arise in both my work and my journey. These are likely going to resonate with a lot of you because they are so core to what's innate and intrinsic in all of us. The first is that we're all connected. We're also all worthy, and it's all temporary, including us. Understanding and accepting these truths has the power and potential to not only free us from individual needless suffering throughout our lives, but also to help us address the greater challenges of the world we care so deeply about. Perhaps the greatest lesson you learn when you become an international humanitarian aid worker is that everything is connected. We are all truly connected. When you start out passionate about something in particular, like education and improving literacy in a rural village somewhere, you start to notice that a lot of school children will not come to school if they're sick, and they get sick a lot. So then you try to keep the children healthy enough to go to school and realize that they're malnourished and that the community doesn't have the sanitation needs met, the local water supply is contaminated. So you start to introduce some hand washing practices and latrines to manage the sanitation and improve health. But this requires cost and upkeep, and the local villagers have to do it themselves. So soon you find yourself trying to figure out how to run and grow an agriculture program, working with local farmers in that village to improve their crop yields so they can not only keep their own families fed and healthy, but also afford to sell some of their excess crops to earn pay, to pay for those hand washing stations, the latrines, the medicine, the school fees, the uniforms, and the books. And as any humanitarian aid worker will tell you, as complicated as all of that just sounded, and how interwoven it seems, that was a drastic oversimplification of the realities we face in the field. If only it were that simple. Humanitarian aid shows us how ultimately it's all interconnected. As an example of how this plays out on a larger scale, I worked with the nonprofit Mercy Corps on projects focused on the Western Sahel region of Africa, an arid band of countries like Senegal and Nigeria, where ongoing food insecurity is a major constraint on any form of peace building or sustainable development. When there is food insecurity, populations that could otherwise coexist peacefully find themselves competing over ever shrinking amounts of arable land on which farmers can grow crops or nomadic herders can graze their animals. As climate change worsens, these arable areas of land become smaller and more subject to unpredictable droughts, flooding, and extreme weather, which ultimately drive and exacerbate conflict and genocide. We've seen the fruits of this even in the last week or so, with kidnappings of schoolgirls by Boko Haram in Nigeria. While it's true that violence and kidnappings are often motivated by religious extremism or poverty, the root causes of both are very deep and complex. Poverty and extremism are heightened in areas experiencing ongoing food insecurity, civil conflict, lack of basic infrastructure, poor governance, and lack of access to basic needs like education, healthcare, financial resources, and of course, human rights. For people as moved as I am by ongoing tragedies like these constant kidnappings or famine in Ethiopia or genocide in Sudan, one of the simplest things we can do from afar every single day is to put our energy into demanding action by ourselves, our communities, our businesses, and our governments to curb climate change. If we work to restore balance to ecosystems that sustain life in these faraway places, if we help ensure that there's more arable land on which crops can grow and cattle can graze, we begin to turn the tide and account for our part in these conflicts and tragedies. We can help rebuild the foundation for these people and places to focus less on survival and instead on creating, building, and upholding systems of good governance with access to resources and opportunities to build better futures for themselves and generations to come. That means actions you can take right now on these issues might be better understanding and managing your energy and water consumption, changing how you get around, walking, biking, and using public transit, eating less meat and throwing away less food. The livestock industry and rotting food in landfills are huge contributors to carbon emissions. And perhaps most importantly, holding businesses and governments accountable. Put your votes and your dollars towards only those that align with your values and are committed to reducing emissions and waste. Really consider if that 2-day shipping is ultimately worth the cost of democracy at home and lives abroad. Few tools you have at your disposal are as powerful as the dollars in your bank account and the ballots you cast and the everyday choices that you make that collectively across populations and time add up and shape the world that we live in. As Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. You matter, and your everyday actions and decisions matter. It's all connected. To illustrate how this interconnectedness can make or break great ideas, here are some examples of things that maybe didn't work out as their creators had hoped because of the wider ecosystems they were part of and long-term impact. Did you know that 60% of charity-built wells in Africa are broken down and useless because foreign workers came in with foreign materials, never teaching locals how to repair the wells and never giving them access to replacement parts? And did you know that a lot of those companies that sound really great because they give away something like a pair of socks or shoes to someone in need for everyone that you buy, they often do more harm than good by damaging local economies when they drop a one-time massive shipment into a village, putting anyone making that product locally out of business and creating dependency on foreign aid. But don't give up hope. There are organizations that are thinking it through and doing it right. Some examples include Nuru International in rural Kenya, where I lived and worked before moving here to San Francisco, which comprehensively addresses the root causes of extreme poverty while cultivating local leaders and local business to maintain it. So communities can sustainably create their own pathways out of poverty without dependency on foreign workers or foreign aid. And there's another one I love that we partnered with when I was with the microfinance organization Kiva. It's called Solar Sister, and it's a social enterprise that trains and supports women to get clean, renewable, affordable solar products and clean cook stoves to rural communities across Africa. These ladies are preventing the cutting down of trees and the burning and breathing in of dangerous substances like kerosene. So they're protecting the environment, improving public health and safety, all while building the local economy and women's role in it. When we're able to step back and see the interconnected nature of all things, we can see how our choices and actions will truly impact lives and the world in a lasting way. Another key takeaway of international humanitarian work, and perhaps life in general, is that second bullet point. We are all worthy. I like to think we're born knowing this, or perhaps at least hoping it, but there are many things in the world that try to tell us otherwise. To help illustrate this, I'd like to introduce the beautiful Esperanza here. Every 3 minutes, a child is born somewhere in the world with a cleft or split or opening in their lip or the roof of their mouth, the palate of the mouth. And some children, like Esperanza here, have both, making it challenging and painful for her to do even the simplest things like eat, drink, or smile. I was shocked to learn that 1 in 10 children born with a cleft lip or palate are killed by their own families or communities for being born with a cleft condition. These conditions are sometimes seen as a curse, and often there are no trained surgeons, or surgery might be inaccessible or unaffordable for most families. The children with cleft who do survive their infancy face tremendous hardships throughout their lives. They suffer a lot of physical challenges. For example, babies with a cleft lip can't properly form suction to breastfeed, and they often become malnourished. And children with a cleft palate, a big hole through the roof of their mouth, have food and liquid pass into their nasal passage when they try to eat or drink, causing pain and sometimes infections. They tend to have great difficulty speaking and are often held out of school, bullied, abused, ostracized, and abandoned. Not only does this keep them from receiving an education, but it's hard to find acceptance in their own community and form friendships. And later in life, it's challenging to find work or a partner to build a life and family with. But in just a few hours of free surgery, we at Alliance for Smiles, thanks to our donors and volunteers, can change the entire trajectory of these children's lives forever. And not only that, we are training and equipping the local medical teams to be able to provide that surgery without us. As you can imagine, the girl on the left, the before, she experiences a very different life, physically and socially, than the girl on the right. There are actually over 5 billion people globally who lack access to the life-saving surgery that they need. That means that 17 million people are dying needlessly every single year. Every 2 seconds, someone dies because of this. At Alliance for Smiles, we are working to change that. So hopefully soon, no child or community will have to wait to get the life-changing and often life-saving care that they need, because every child and every life is worthy. Stories we're told and systems that we live in may try to tell some of us that we're not worthy. That because we're a different race, religion, skin color, background, it affects how worthy we are. That who we love affects how worthy we are, or how much wealth we've accumulated. But I imagine there's something deep within you, like there is in me, that senses that this is not only completely untrue, but perhaps it's the very root of much of the unnecessary pain and suffering in the world. Let's look at half of the world's population that still suffer from systemic inequality: women and girls. Of the 27 to 50 million people who experience human trafficking in the world, more than 70% of them are women and girls. Women continue to do 3 times the unpaid labor that men do, and those who are paid earn around 20 to 35% less than men for equal work. Women have on average 64% of the legal rights of men. There are right now 122 million school-age girls who don't have access to an education. But if they did, it would change a lot. They would be less vulnerable to human traffickers. They would be 6 times less likely to get married while they're still children. They themselves would have fewer children later in life, but those children would be healthier and be set up more for success. For every year of secondary school a girl completes, her earning potential goes up by about 15% each year of secondary school. Meaning these girls could not only break the cycle of poverty for themselves and their children, but in fact, even the wider world. If a country like India increased girls' enrollment in secondary school by just 1%, its national GDP is estimated to grow by about $5.5 billion. When I worked with the microfinance organization Kiva, we saw that not only are women much more likely to repay a microloan, but they also reinvest around 90% of their income back in their families or communities, compared to just 30 or 40% that's reinvested by men. Recognizing and honoring the inherent equal worthiness of all, in this case, women and girls, benefits everyone now and in generations to come. So many of us struggle with our worthiness, whether because of the stories the world tells us or the stories we've started to tell ourselves. As I share in my chapter, Begin It Now, much of the early years of my life and work were spent trying to prove to the world, and perhaps primarily to myself, that I was worthy of acceptance, of love, of even the space and the air that I consume. I looked out at the world and saw countless ways it demanded that I prove my worthiness by achieving or accumulating, by the degrees, titles, and money I earned, by climbing ladders and collecting things that supposedly equaled success, more status, money, approval. All the while, there was a growing sense deep within me that it all felt a bit hollow, and it didn't offer what my soul was seeking. The only place that could be found was within me. The knowing that my essential self, my true nature, had been there all along, under all the ill-fitting suits and masks I tried on, waiting to be seen and recognized as holy and already perfect, ever evolving and completely worthy. That true self refuses to waste time on any nonsense, particularly defending my own ego or performing to prove anything to anyone. You too are worthy, just as you are. You have nothing to prove. We're all temporary. Perhaps that's the most important and universal of all the lessons. It's all temporary. Yet this lesson seems to be the one truth that many people will do pretty much anything in their power to avoid or deny. I'm currently in a year-long class, a lifelong class too, about death and dying, called A Year to Live, which asks what we would do differently if we knew today was the first day of our last year on Earth. In truth, none of us knows how much time we have, but we all know somewhere deep down that our time's limited. As part of our homework in this class, we start and end every single day of the entire year with the 5 remembrances. Summarized, they state that we're all of the nature to age, to get sick, to be separated from everyone and everything that we hold dear, and to die. And that the only thing we have control over is our choices and actions in our brief lifetime. When I first heard that I was going to have to say these every single morning and every evening, I thought, wow, that's depressing. But now, as I recite them by heart each day, I'm so deeply grateful to be awake to the fleeting nature of life, to know that my time here is limited, just as it's limited with everyone and everything I hold dear. It not only increases my gratitude and experience by magnitudes, but it reminds me to be deeply present in each precious moment, not worrying about the future that may never come or the past that is already gone. As I talk about in my chapter, this has allowed me to accept myself and my life fully as they are, to release triggers and traumas of the past and anxieties about the future. Every morning over coffee, my partner Kevin and I remind ourselves of this very fact by reciting Thich Nhat Hanh's words. Waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and to look at all beings with eyes of compassion. We often add the phrase, especially ourselves, to the end of this, and acknowledging that self compassion can often be the most difficult form for people like us. To live fully in each moment is the title of my chapter in Begin It Now. But what is it to live fully in each moment? It's to be fully awake and alive to this experience of life. So much of our suffering is wishing the unchangeable past were any different than it is, or spent in fears about the future that is outside of our control. If we can be fully present, we can look at our triggers and traumas that we carry from the past with gentle inquiry and release, knowing that we're safe in this moment, in the now. We can embrace the uncertainties of the future as part of the great mystery that makes our lives worth living. As we grow in acceptance of all that which is outside of our control, and acceptance that we are all worthy and connected, we are better able to release our fears and judgments that we hold about ourselves or others that only serve to cause more needless suffering. This is to live fully in each moment. And this is to look at all beings with eyes of compassion, especially ourselves. Our deepest need is belonging and connection. It's programmed in our DNA for our survival. We want to know that we're worthy so that we know that we belong and that we can stay connected to one another, that we won't be cast aside for our mistakes or rejected and outcast for who we truly are. We spend so much of our lives seeking connection and worthiness and avoiding our own temporary mortal nature. But all of it is innate truth that's within us always. We may try to learn what ladders we're supposed to climb and what titles and roles we're supposed to take on, what possessions and wealth we're supposed to accumulate to be worthy, before we learn that none of it actually contributes to worthiness at all. And any connections they bring aren't the connections that really nourish us. We try on those ill-fitting suits and masks before we realize that who we inherently are underneath it all is all that we ever need to be. We feel shame and isolation because of our mistakes and missteps throughout life before we realize they're necessary for us to evolve, to learn, to become what's next, to grow into even more fully realized versions of ourselves. We build our ego in all the ways the world tells us that we should. Before, if we're one of the lucky ones, we get to watch that ego and any certainties about life that we ever held crumble and dissolve. We then begin instead to live in alignment with our true nature and our true self. We stop believing that connection and worthiness are things outside of us that we have to seek and earn. We recognize that our time here is limited, and we stop wasting it performing, judging, comparing, or seeking to prove anything about ourselves or our worth. And we instead allow ourselves to live into the experience of happiness, connection, and worthiness in the time that we have. We experience ourselves, one another, and the world around us more fully and with infinitely more gratitude, knowing it's all temporary and finite. As temporary as it is, we're still interconnected to everything else, which makes us part of something vast and infinite. As Alan Watts described, we are all part of the vast ocean, and each life is just a wave upon that ocean, a momentary expression of the ocean in its perfect wave forms. Your wave is beautiful and complete as it is, and you are worthy and connected to all the other waves, no more and no less than any of them, and no more and no less than a vast miracle. May you live fully in each moment and enjoy your ride as long as it lasts. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I honor this time with you, and I hope you will reach out to me about anything you want to connect about more. We are all connected. Thank you so much.